Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from lastcar.info, and welcome to Behind the Wall, the post-race show that comes on after the race. We're unofficially pending the results of post-race inspection. The penultimate race of the NASCAR Cup Series season has seen William Byron pull off the victory and punch his ticket into the playoffs. This being after his very hard wreck that he had at Las Vegas a couple weeks ago, running into the back of Ty Dillon coming off turn 4 during a late exchange of pit stops, and then spinning within sight of the finish line at Talladega just last week, which also cost him positions on a day where he also looked like he was going to be in contention to win. This time around, after struggling, it seems, in the last couple of fall races at Martinsville, and having difficulty trying to get over the hump here at the very end. We, of course, remember all the chicanery that happened in this race last year, but this time around, straight up, just took it to him and led three-fifths of the race here. 304 of the 500 laps were led by the number 24 car out here. Had a strong showing to the weekend in general. Ryan Blaney, was the only real serious contender in the second half of it. Looked like he was going to take control of the race. Unfortunately, was bumped out of the way in heavy traffic. And, as I always say on this show, if you don't want to get beat, you shouldn't get caught. Because that's what happens. And I think there's probably a theme of that really across all three of the races this weekend. And of course, we'll be talking about that with the Xfinity and the Truck Series. We'll also be looking ahead to Phoenix this weekend. We'll be returning to trackside coverage to close out the 2025 season. Kind of an interesting way to round things out here. I think right off the bat, I'm just very pleased that this race played out naturally, and I'm kind of seeing some comments already mentioning that here already. This Martinsville race, and we've seen this especially more of an issue in the Xfinity series in recent years, all kinds of chaos, people riding the wall, all kinds of silly stuff happening, and of course that's the kind of stuff that everybody wants, seemingly, with this playoff system here. It seems like we had drivers running over the top of each other, either, even with the older car, during this format here at the same time. But, again, I think that we had an interesting way for all of this to play out. And, kudos to Byron on the victory, though. I mean, Byron's one of those drivers that, for most of this year, of course, he won the Daytona 500, second time in a row doing it. Seemed like he really struggled over the summer, and maybe, Hendrick's caliber struggles, like, not necessarily small team struggles, not like DNFs and stuff, but more like just, kind of not really being a factor in the win. Coming out of this here and doing it at the right time, this is where we'd seen Ryan Blaney do it, of course, the last 2 years in a row, winning this race. Looked like he was going to be potentially doing it a third year in a row, which is just unprecedented. It seems like you go back to the days of Darrell Waltrip and even more recently with Jimmy Johnson just being seemingly untouchable at Martinsville here around and just being that much more incredible that Byron got back up there. I think it was a very well-driven race. I think that it wasn't too chaotic. Obviously, there were some exceptions here. Drivers that struggled at the back of the field. We saw Carson Hocevar involved in a number of the cautions. We saw Riley Herbst have a series of mechanical issues and just straight up struggling right from the start of this race here. And we'll talk about the NASCAR championship here, very relevant to this part of the discussion here too. But before we get through that, again, William Byron, your winner unofficially. Ryan Blaney in the second spot. Chase Elliott in third. Not quite able to close in that gap there after the last place finish at Talladega last week. But again, a fine run. I think he came in with the right mental attitude with the interviews coming into it. I'm sure his fans are disappointed, but again, a strong effort there and some cold comfort perhaps with two of his Hendrick teammates now going against two Joe Gibbs cars in the championship for next week. Ross Chastain with a fine run there in fourth, about the best he'd run the entire day there, closing up there at the end. Kyle Larson, another Hendrick driver that we'd seen just sporadically this year, compared to years past there. Again, fifth place finish, solid effort there for him. Ryan Preece, very impressive among the non-playoff guys out there. I thought he lost a lap at the opening stage. It seemed like, hardly anybody didn't for what torrid of a pace that Byron had set at the very beginning of this. So many drivers lost a lap in the first stage alone. But a lot of drivers rallying back from that. Priest, certainly one of them there. Christopher Bell in 7th, Joey Logano in 8th, Todd Gilliland in 9th. Another fine run there for Front Row Motorsports. Was kind of in and around the top part of the field there, the closing stages. Good to see him rally there. Josh Berry nearly had a top 5 towards the end of this before the last round of pit stops there and finishing in the 10th spot. Yeah, again, I think, really a pretty solid race. In general there, not without its share of, mistakes and some controversy there along the way. Certainly the continued issues over officiating with a couple of cautions that came out that potentially came out a bit late or nearly not at all. I think for Eric Jones, for example, the couple of incidents he had when he was spun and the car was perpendicular to the track, you could tell they were waiting a while during that sequence of stops to actually do anything. But really, I think at that point they should have just, I've made that pretty famous with that didn't need to be a caution logo. And indeed, the earlier incident there with Daniel Suarez where he got, almost spun and pointed the right way, that was pretty quick on the gun. Didn't really need to be something there. But then this one with Jones, yeah, he's sitting in the middle of the track there. It also wasn't that far from the leaders. So clearly they needed to respond to that a lot quicker. When Jones later had the broken right front wheel, and did actually a really good job of getting out of the leader's way, getting through turns 1 and 2 to make it down to pit road. Kudos to his spotter as well as to the driver for managing to do that. I think that was exactly the right way to do it, and I'm glad NASCAR didn't throw a caution for that either. So again, you take a little bit of both ends here, and you get some benefit one way or the other here too. But again, fine run for a number of these drivers. This felt like a much closer to a classic Martinsville race where, yeah, you have some long green flag runs, field gets strung out. Maybe it comes down to 1 or 2 cars that hardly have any marks on them while everybody else's cars all beat to heck. Of course, with these cars here, beat to heck is pretty relative. Even cars in the back of the field seem like they were pretty well intact. You don't really see a whole lot of fenders pushed in or body work missing, although we had a bit of that at Talladega last week. Again, I think that I was glad to see that you could navigate through traffic better. We didn't have what we saw back at Iowa or even the spring race here where the field got stacked up. The leaders couldn't get around the back of the field, and you were just kind of running in line the whole time because everybody was just too equal. I think the tire that Goodyear brought, which still smeared the rubber on the side of the cars, and we saw chunks of rubber coming off the tires there, I think that was very good. I think that we saw this last year as well in the last green flag run when Blaney prevailed. And we even saw a lot of exchanges for the lead as a result of that, which made things really interesting, especially with the points and how they were working out there at the same time. So I'm glad that they stuck with that. I'll be curious to see if we see something like that at Phoenix. I'm sure they've had this in the back of their mind to try to make the Phoenix race as competitive as possible. That track has become such a Frankenstein with the reconfiguration of it and the physical demands on these cars to go down into that dog leg and come back up, how they're able to go 3 wide and so forth, and then have to funnel down exiting turn 2 where they're basically running almost single file there and then fanning back out again. It's always a very challenging track. I wouldn't quite put it in the same category as an obstacle course like the Charlotte Roval, but pretty close to it, about as close as an oval could get to it, and makes it kind of an uneven championship venue. And indeed, this is going to be the last year, at least for right now, that Phoenix is going to be the championship venue. Homestead coming back next year and potentially being a full season championship. We'll wait for the official word on all of that coming down the line there too. But have to say, I picked Ryan Blaney in the fantasy picks on this week. I really thought he was going to be able to pull it off. Definitely found himself in a very difficult hole at the beginning of this to qualify in 31st. I believe that was worse of the playoff drivers. Getting back up there, I thought he did a very methodical job there at the beginning to get himself into the top 10. The broadcast did a decent job chronicling that as well. So I really enjoyed seeing him be able to kind of work his way into contention and see what he can do up there. And given his record here, I was like, wow, if he's got a car good enough to do that, he's going to be very tough. Unfortunately, not quite as tough as Byron turned out to be in this race here as well. Going back to the back of the field, we'll talk about the last place battle here too, because there were plenty of twists and turns of that coming into this. Riley Herbst came into this race with 4 last place finishes this year, the only one of the top 3 series to reach that point in 2025. Riley looked like he was going to be a shoo-in to get his 5th last place finish of the season, and indeed would then lock up the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series championship. that he has now led for these last couple of weeks. Came very close to that. They had all kinds of problems at the beginning. While Casey Mears, congratulations, by the way, to Mears on his 600th NASCAR start, this being in the Truck Series race, now 601 after the Cup Series race this afternoon. Mears at the back of the field was right back there trying to kind of work his way through traffic. Lost a lap during a first round of pit stops. And what was very interesting, though, and showing how much Herbst was struggling, was on the next restart, Mears was getting back up there, actually passing the number 35, and even though it wasn't really for position, and ultimately dropping the 35 back to last after multiple pit stops. It sounded like another consequence of these tires, and I didn't really hear this as much in the broadcast, is how easily flat-spotted they were and how much of a detriment that was. I mean, you always hear about this at road courses where you have all these very aggressive corners and you have to have a very aggressive racecraft to get around there. But it seemed like this was a particularly big issue, especially for drivers at the back of the field here. Overcooking their tires, slamming into the first corner, obviously getting into those hairpins, very similar to turn 11 at Sears Point. So not entirely unprecedented, but it seemed like, we saw a lot of drivers making unscheduled stops. AJ Allmendinger was doing this. Austin Dillon was as well. But Riley Herbst there seemed like he was making all kinds of stops there through about the first half of the race, and it just dropped him more and more laps down, and looked like he was going to be the story for this day. And indeed, if it turned out to be, it would have been his fifth last place finish of this year. First time in several years we've had the NASCAR Cup champion have that many, something that's still possible for next week. But ultimately, he was trading the spot there. Cody Ware ended up taking the spot after a loose wheel on his car, causing a spin in turns 3 and 4. He gets sent back down pit road, has a 2-lap penalty. That dropped him to last behind Herbst. Then Riley struggles some more, and it's like kind of neck and neck between the two of them. Cody was actually one of the drivers where if he finished last in both this race and next week at Phoenix, he would actually take the NASCAR Cup Series championship. This now, pending the results of post-race inspection, has now closed the doors on that. The other driver that was going to be in contention in that position was going to be Ryan Blaney, actually. If you remember last year, Blaney very nearly became the first driver in the entire history of the sport to win a NASCAR and NASCAR championship in the exact same year. Something so unprecedented, but it took this playoff system to even create the possibility of that even happening. But 0.3 of a second was a difference last November. Blaney finishing second in the championship race to his teammate, as we all recall. But this time here, Blaney nearly winning the race, and now eliminated from the NASCAR championship contenders. And so now going into next week, and I still need to compute the actual standings here after we get the official word from technical inspection, it would then be Riley Herbst ahead of AJ Allmendinger and Josh Berry being your contenders for the NASCAR Cup Series championship into next week. And I'll talk about the Xfinity and the Truck Series championship a little bit later in the show. We talk about all those three series at the same time. So an interesting exchange. But of course, I'm burying the lead here. The last place finisher ended up being a very surprising turn of events. Several Toyota teams having mechanical issues towards the end. You don't usually think of Martinsville with having engine failures necessarily. I have to kind of go back and kind of think of Ricky Rudd, losing an engine in 2001, or Dale Earnhardt back in 92. Not to say it hasn't happened. It's just uncommon. Usually you see rear gear failures. You see transmission failures, brake failures for sure. Brakes just incinerating the car. Those are kind of more common situations here. But in this case here, as Riley Herbst's car was falling apart more and more towards the end, we first had Chase Briscoe lose the engine when he was running in 12th spot. I was going back to the camera there to show where he was running. He looked like he was on the lead lap still and trying to, get somewhat of a decent finish. And Denny Hamlin, moments later, breaking down off of turn 2, car just didn't accelerate out of the corner and pulled back behind the wall. Of course, both those drivers, now here's the other problem I have with this playoff system, of course. Think about the high drama we would have from, Denny Hamlin and Chase Briscoe having as great of seasons as they've had if they had a full season championship, and now coming down towards the end of the year where maybe they would have had a chance to maybe clinch the championship. It instead goes down to the finale. How crazy would that be? I'm sure we'll see what the Winston Cup points and everything looks like from that, and it'll be, I guess we can speculate as to how that would have worked out. But it's unfortunate that in this playoff system, fortunate for Briscoe and Hamlin, of course, that they've now won the first 2 races of the round of 8. And, of course, they're locked into the championship 4. And so these engine failures at the end are meaningless, except for putting a little bit of doubt in the back of their mind about, like, okay, is this car going to hold together? Phoenix, of course, is one of the shortest races of the season. It always seems like it's gone in the blink of an eye, even when we're covering it in person. But, you know, again, can be a very demanding track mechanically. Are TRD's engines or Joe Gibbs Racing's engines going to be up to the task? We're going to find out in very short order. And, yeah, that's going to be raising some concerns there coming into it. But Martinsville, very demanding on RPMs and, you know, the quick braking and so forth. And that was definitely an effect that we saw here. Briscoe, now with his 3rd last place finish in his Cup Series career, his first of the season in a points race. You may recall he was last back at the Busch Series Clash. Last place finish for the 19 since last August at Richmond. So kudos to him on that for having kind of a long streak. Another measure of, again, how good of a year Briscoe himself has had. Yeah, previous 2 last place runs he's had were with Stewart Haas Racing. The most recent of those was the fall race at Atlanta last year when he was involved in a multi-car accident in the playoffs there. But this time around, again, not something that's going to be too much of a concern, although somewhat remarkable. The first time the number 19 has finished last in a Cup Series race at Martinsville since the fall race in 1986 when Mike Quick, a.k.a. the same driver that you always identify with the Lowe's car and the number 31 car, of course, talking about it in 500 days and other videos here on this channel, was making one of his first ever starts driving for the Zandworth Racing Team in a unsponsored number 19 Pontiac. Lost oil pressure about 30 laps into the race and spun. I posted the picture earlier on that. That is the last time the number 19 has finished last in a Cup race at Martinsville, which is pretty remarkable when you consider the number of teams that have run that number. Certainly at Joe Gibbs Racing over the years here with Carl Edwards and Martin Truex and now with Briscoe, and then other part-time teams along the way. It maybe wasn't the most common number in that time. I guess that's kind of the interesting thing to think about. Although the number 19 is still very, very high in the last car Cup Series standings, I believe it's still only behind the number 66 now that I think about it. Let me look at those results here at the same time. And let's see. Indeed, there it is. Yes, this will be the 50th last place run for the number 19. The leader is still the number 66 with 71 in the Cup Series. And, of course, you think about Prism Motorsports, HP Racing, other programs over the years that have run that number. Phil Parsons running it back in the 80s. Yeah, again, it's a lot of different drivers that have run that number and not always drivers and teams that have always had the best of luck out there. But the 19, very much in the same blush. I mean, I think about TriStar Motorsports, Loy Allen Jr., Gary Bradbury, drivers that have all been running with that team too. But again, not a number you actually see every year either. And indeed, between 1986 and just this afternoon, that was the gap there with the last place run there as well. So, yeah, another kind of interesting twist here at the same time. But unofficially, pending the results of post-race inspection, that will be your story there for the last place finish there for Chase Briscoe. Riley Herbst, again, out of the race there. Sounded like they were going to try to come back out. They had a battery issue. They were losing voltage. They had to swap the battery out. They lost a lap in the process. By that point, they were already about 5 laps down, so it really wasn't a matter of them falling out of contention necessarily. But finishing in the 36th spot, Denny Hamlin dropping out about 11 laps later. Eric Jones shown in 34th. I don't know if he was actually out of the race after that mechanical issue. Big thanks to Steve Toronto for, again, doing some great coverage there from the track side here today, showing that Casey Mears dropped out in the closing stages and his car was pushed back behind the wall. A lot of times, I find this even in my own coverage as well, that, car breaking down or falling out of the race in the closing stages is very easy to overlook because, of course, we're all watching the finish and we're trying to see who's going to win, and that's where it gets exciting. But sometimes stuff like that happens behind the scenes there as well. So kudos there on that, because I know that gets tricky when you're trying to watch multiple things at the same time. But maybe Martinsville makes it a little bit easier since the track's so small, and you probably had to just take a step out of the way of a car coming in the garage area too. I haven't covered a race there yet. One of these days we're going to have to do that, but that'll be another thing to look at for one of these days here at the same time. Cody Ware coming back to finish 32nd, climbed out of the bottom 5 there at the end, in part because of the issues there for Joe Gibbs Racing, but further back there as well. Cole Custer, a lot of drivers that had multiple spins seem to come back into contention here. Very surprised to see Cole Custer up in 17th. Seemed like he was hitting everything but the lottery. Kyle Busch up there in the 13th spot. Looked like he was just, again, on another really frustrating race. But much like what we saw, what was it? Is it Talladega or Las Vegas? We had kind of an issue there with that too. Where were we on that? Okay, I'm sorry. I was just checking the chat there too. Okay. But looking further back in the results here too, Shane Van Gisbergen in a 14th place finish. Fine effort for him. We've seen road course specialists run very well at Martinsville before. AJ Allmendinger and Jamie McMurray, there was somebody tweeting about this just this week, remarking on how surprising it was that there were many times that they would run very well. But again, about brake conservation and just trying to be there at the end, having to attack those corners, and just talking about, the setup now with, again, these issues compounded with how difficult it is to run on flat spotted tires. Kind of lends itself perhaps to, that form of racing there too. So a fine effort for him on the lead lap there for Van Gisbergen and Busch there as well, 13th and 14th. Ty Gibbs in the 12th spot there behind Tyler Reddick. Kind of an interesting group there up front. But several other drivers struggling much more. Carson Hocevar, again, mentioning his multiple cautions out there. It seemed like Kyle Larson was kind of poking fun at that as well in his post-race interview. 3 laps down in the 31st spot there, too. And, just going to be interested to see where all this untangles here in a couple weeks, or not in a couple weeks, in a couple of days here, coming up next week there for the championship in Phoenix. The championship always wraps up so quickly. That's always another problem I've had with the playoff system here, and hopefully that does change. It always seems like, you set this up, and you got the 10 races to go, you got the 3 race rounds, and then you just kind of click through them, and you're just busting through them so quick. And these drivers don't really have a chance to really recover from any issues they have. They just kind of have to hope that the same bad luck's going to hit enough of the other field that they can get back in there or potentially win a race. The thing is, and again, I talked about this a little bit on last week's show. I think on paper, the playoff system makes a lot of sense. On paper, it does. You think like, okay, it's like, oh, wow, you have these rounds and somebody has to win in advance, and it's how difficult it is to win. And then you're going to get the best of the best, only the ones that can really kind of get up to that level. But a lot of times something that looks good on paper doesn't work in practice. And, while I do think that we have had some really interesting moments, and I do think we're in for some interesting championship battles next week at Phoenix, I'll be very relieved when we move past this phase and get back to the full season championship there. I think there's a lot of fear from people that, again, in this sport, that maybe you're newer to the sport or newer to promoting it. Indeed, it's been a long time since we've had a full season championship again. But I think it still accomplishes what you want to have in this sport. You want to have storylines. You want to have, drivers really trying to string together the best series of runs they can. Because again, the big issue is it's so difficult to win these races. And that's a big element of this. And I think it's something that's taken for granted really in today's NASCAR, which is unfortunate. Yes, you're going to have drivers coming along that make it look easy. And indeed, we've seen that in the Xfinity and the Truck Series. We've seen that with Zilich in Xfinity and Hyman Trucks. And they've made it look easy. They just stormed to these wins. Indeed, Zilich coming back from his injury, but it hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy. Zilich came back from 2 injuries. He got injured at Talladega. He slipped off the car in victory lane at Watkins Glen, came back from both injuries to win races and have that record top 5 streak between the 2 Talladega events. Still tremendous. Corey Haim, same thing. All these championships slapped out of his hand in the playoffs there after having several tremendous seasons, and now has to do it all over again. And he gets even more dominant than he's ever been, setting series records and wins and laps led and everything else. And yet these 2 drivers are going to find themselves in a winner-take-all race next week where 3 other drivers could potentially take the championship from them. And it's so unfortunate because, of course, while there have been many times that a driver that's won the most races loses the championship. You think of Bill Elliott in 1985. You think of the 92 championship with how dominant Davey Allison and Bill Elliott were. You think of Rusty Wallace in 1993 winning 10 races and losing to Dale Earnhardt. But that's kind of the beauty of having a longer championship, of having every moment matter. I don't like it when you have championship guys that drop out of a race and they're just like, okay, who cares? Like, it's like, they lose momentum, but they're still in the championship four. It's like, no, I mean, that's still a very relevant concern about, I mean, even if it were a full season championship or the playoffs, it's still a very relevant concern about what the nature of their engines are going to be. Again, Phoenix being a very demanding track with, the stakes as high as they can be. But again, having drivers win the most races, winning the championship, in a perfect world, it would always happen that way. But that's kind of the wonderful thing in motorsports is it's very difficult to win a race, but it is even more difficult to win a championship. And that's the way it should be. And it shouldn't be difficult because of a bunch of gimmicks that are thrown in. It should be difficult because every aspect has to be as perfect as it can be, knowing that, and this is the important condition, knowing that that level of perfection is impossible. And this is why we shouldn't get hung up about Ryan Newman in 2003 having all those wins. Because again, he is striving for that kind of perfection, but, fell short of it. And if you can manage to, salvage a good run, even if the day is not that good, if you have a car that's maybe going to be 25th place and you can get that thing to like 10th at the end of the day, that may well be, just as hard as actually pulling off the win. And that's really important. But if you have a whole lot of bad runs, even with the rules and stuff that are in place of the crash clock and so forth, and you have a lot of DNFs and you're finishing, if you're going for the last car championship, it's going to be very difficult to win a title, and it should be made difficult. That's why you think back to Bill Elliott in 85 and how he struggled at the short tracks, and Darrell Waltrip took advantage. You think back to 93 and Rusty Wallace having those very serious accidents that Talladega and Daytona that year, including, the Talladega one actually breaking his wrist, and he had to go back out at Sears Point the next week to try to gut it out as best he could. And then even more recently in 2003 with Ryan Newman, a lot of those wrecks were also at the super speedways, which are very much the bane of his career too. That's where, again, we need to kind of get back to that. Hopefully we get back there. We'll find out if that's going to be the case or not. Because again, a race like this would fit in just as well in a full season championship. I think we saw some solid racing in this here. Yes, things could be better with the next gen car. It'd be wonderful if you saw more damage and teams kind of trying to find creative solutions to keep their cars rolling. But again, that's something else that can be worked on down the line there too. So hopefully that'll be something else to kind of look at there at the same time. But again, nothing to take away from William Byron at all. He drove a wonderful race out there. And indeed, again, if you have a driver that, it used to be years ago during the same full season deal that you win the Daytona 500, you usually weren't a factor to win the championship. Because, again, you think of drivers that really struggle the rest of the year. Ward Burton's a perfect example of that. His 2002 season was a real big struggle. I think even Jeb was talking about this on his podcast a while back and just how that distinguishes from it. So, again, you would strive for consistent excellence as best as it can be. But I think that NASCAR, in adopting this playoff system, has just overstated that. They need to view this, and again, stick and ball sports aren't the best comparison, is what's brought us into this. But if they want to make stick and ball their comparison, they should be looking at baseball and how, like, the greatest batters, they miss 7 out of 10 hits. It's not saying that, they're not training hard enough or that they choked or that they're not performing well enough or something. It's just that that's realistically as good as you can be. And again, you look at these drivers and their win totals. Yeah, a guy's going to win, maybe be a championship caliber driver winning 3 or 4 races. Well, then that just means they lost 32, 33 races. And maybe in their whole career, they've lost you're going to lose more races than you win, generally. Even Richard Petty had that in his career. He had 200 wins. He had 1,184 starts. I mean, what were all those? And that's why that's the error with situational winning. You'd like to think that a driver will somehow be able to will their car over everything else to win a race when they need to win it and then do it multiple times in the playoffs, but that just doesn't happen. That's just not the norm. And that's why I think we get some of these championship 4 groups where they're not always, the group that you would expect to be in there. And you would think generally with the stuff that's put in there to help somebody that's the regular season champion or a guy that wins the most races, that they'll still be in there. But for example, Shane Van Gisbergen's not in the Final Four, despite, having 5 wins on the season. And everybody wants to hang an apostrophe on that because, they're all road courses and like that shouldn't count or anything. But I mean, should it? Again, if it's this big of a part of the schedule, we're working in a different paradigm than back when there were only 2 road courses on the season. So again, and this is, these are the kind of discussions that need to be had and hopefully are having behind the scenes here as we evaluate things from this year. And I'm also bringing this up because I'm kind of bracing myself for this next week that we could potentially see a situation where, at least in trucks and Xfinity, a driver who has dominated every facet of this season, who in a regular season points championship, whether the field, not the field and system, the Winston Cup points system or the current points, would have probably locked up the championship, last week, if not this week, potentially lose the championship. And, if that does happen in either or both of those, or if it even comes close to happening, I think that's going to be, I think we're going to get a lot of very interesting conversations after that. Indeed, I'm planning on doing a show next Sunday after the Cup Series race at Phoenix. We'll be doing it in the hotel room there after the race. So kind of similar to what I did at Rockingham and at Sears Point earlier this year. And we'll definitely be picking up the pieces after that as well. But very interesting because, again, I think this race would fit in perfectly with a full season deal. And, hopefully that's going to be something more like the norm that we see coming up here as well. We'll talk about the Xfinity and the Truck Series races here as well. Let me get some other stats pulled up here at the same time. And I think this dovetails nicely into a discussion that I think comes up from a couple of incidents. We didn't see as much of this as an issue in the Cup race today, unless something came up during the post-race interviews. I started this up basically after Kyle Larson's interview. So I don't know if there was anything where you had drivers that were particularly upset at each other, but this was absolutely a concern from our last couple of races here as well. So I want to kind of go into that. We'll get into the Xfinity series here first. Let me get my chart on here. I need to get my other chart. Where is it? Not that one. We don't need that. And we don't need that. We'll put those away. Let me get bear with me here, folks. We'll get some more information here for you. Just kind of looking out of the corner of my eye here as well. Andrew Bremner, I do plan on doing some live streams over the off season. Not every week. I haven't decided what schedule it'll be. I'll probably be less of them than I did last year. I want to be able to spend some more time working on some of these videos here as well and kind of get those over the finish line. But we'll see. I do enjoy doing the streams, and I think with the lawsuit potentially going forward, certainly the other big news story from this week, there's not going to be any shortage of things to talk about as well. But the best way to stay tuned with that would be stay tuned to my Twitter account at LastCarOnBrock. I try to give updates as well on my YouTube channel. I don't post there as much as I probably should when I see some other channels do it. But hopefully we'll get those there for you too. Kind of putting this in my screenshots folder. Where is my statistics page? I need that. Okay, here it is. Okay, nope, it's not that one. It's not that one. I need the other one. This is the current rankings. That's what we need. All righty. So yes, as I mentioned a second ago here, Riley Herbst, AJ Allmendinger, and Josh Berry are going to be your contenders for the LastCar Cup Series Championship. We'll break down our clinch scenarios and so forth in the entry list storylines article this week. But I do want to get into the Xfinity side of things, and we will do that. So on that side there, things are very, very interesting. We have now whittled down, it was going to be about a list of about 23 different drivers, including a couple of guys that weren't even in the race itself. We had a bit of late race drama in that this week. And again, I'm enthused to hear that William Sawalich is doing okay. Every report I've heard has sounded like he was very positive. But this after his concussion-like symptoms after the wreck at Talladega. This past week, I tried to reach out. I was kind of following up on a story here and wanted to check with Sawalich as well as AJ Allmendinger about their response from the medical staff at Talladega. I tweeted earlier this week that Allmendinger politely declined to be interviewed about it, that he was already kind of putting the race behind him and moving forward there, and I certainly understand that coming to the end of this season. I had also contacted Sawalich's team and did not hear back from them one way or the other. And of course, the news then came out afterwards that he was not going to be running this weekend. I'm glad to hear he's doing okay. Hopefully runs Phoenix there and can kind of end the season on a high note there. Poor Sawalich really struggled the beginning of part of this year and really seemed to get his feet under him these last few weeks here. He's been very impressive to watch. That turnaround happened at Sears Point, and it seemed like ever since then that just lit a fire under him. Unfortunately, his statistics from this first part of the year are the only reason he's still one of the contenders for the NASCAR Xfinity Series championship here at the same time. But all of this, we'll keep this in the background here for now and talk about the man of the hour in this one, Taylor Gray, pulling off the Xfinity Series win yesterday, his first Xfinity win, the win that was ripped from his grasp from the contact from Sammy Smith there at the end of the spring race. And wouldn't you know, Sammy Smith still in the second spot there with very much a chance to rout him out of the way. This time did not do so there and finished in the second spot there. So a fine effort for both those drivers, a good bit of improvement. NASCAR, of course, admonishing the Xfinity Series field that they did not want to repeat what they saw in the spring race, or I believe even the fall race from last year. But again, kind of an interesting way that all that played out. A lot of the playoff drivers just did a really impressive job out there. Some of them in different gradations of that. Connor Zilic having the damage that he suffered in practice, having to start the back of the field there because he didn't qualify, getting back out there and climbing all the way up to the 9th spot there at the finish. A race that he was, never a factor in, didn't lead any laps in, didn't have to be a factor in it there. But again, showing that he's able to be very resilient and get back up there. Indeed, when he goes into the championship race next week, it's going to be a bit trickier because it's a shorter race again, for the Phoenix track, and very difficult to kind of come back if you have a bad qualifying run. Not like what we saw out of Zilic yesterday and Ryan Blaney earlier today. But again, different deal there too. But Brandon Jones third, Sheldon Creed in fourth, Eric Almirola in fifth. Almirola is showing, having a fine job out there, keeping going in the battle for the Owners Championship there after his win in Las Vegas. Creed did a great job out there. I'm a little disappointed, I will say, that the Haas factory team didn't get either of their cars into the championship four. I've had a wonderful time following kind of their story this year, and very impressed with how they've been able to pick up the pieces and get some good runs out there and making all the way to the championship 8, the round of 8, and on the verge of the championship 4, getting both their cars in the top 10. And again, this is just on paper. I'm not ignoring the elephant in the room. Believe me, we're going to get to that too. I was very impressed with how well that they had fought right here to the end, and unfortunately didn't work out that well for them. But again, this is the part where we have to talk about the drawback to the playoff system, and of course, the other element of it here is this feeling of like a two-tiered sport, because of course, as we know, when you create this playoff system, as with any championship, but particularly with this, where it's a whole group of them and you have a narrow situation that you got to work your way out of in each of these rounds to get to the next round. And there's always this urgency. I do believe that there's been a bit of this sense that these playoff drivers should have like this invisible barrier and everybody gets out of their way and, nobody else should be out there. We could have a race where we, say we wanted to kind of a situation where, you had, maybe you started a race with just the 4 championship eligible drivers or 8 of them or however, and you just have them race each other, have like a heat race to determine that. and then maybe have a race afterwards where everybody races against each other and they win a championship trophy. Maybe that's what they would want. Maybe they would want something like that. I hate to almost put that out there. I'm kind of wincing suggesting that because I feel like NASCAR is maybe thinking about that. I never get any of my ideas, put into print here, but watch, like something I bring up farcically would end up being brought up. But it almost feels like that. It feels like these championship drivers feel like they need to be, they're in their own group and, they're the show and everybody else is in their way. And I get being a competitor. And, as Derek Cope told me before, again, when you're racing other drivers, it's just another car. You don't really pay attention to who it is necessarily. Get in the zone. You're just trying to pass whoever you're passing. And you get up there. But I do think we saw, again, another unfortunate negative example of this. That did admittedly involve the Haas factory team there as well with Sam Mayer and the deal with Jeb Burton. They had some hard racing there. And of course, that's going to happen. It's Martinsville. You got the field. The field is out there. The track is just choked with cars. You had very, very low attrition in this race again, which has very much been the trend, these last few years, even not just the next-gen cars, but even in the Xfinity series here as well. And yeah, you're going to get tempers raising pretty quick, and those tempers are going to raise even higher with the playoff system out there. Again, I didn't see anything that was that outrageous about Jeb Burton racing Sam Mayer. I don't think that there's anything really wrong with that. And getting knocked out of the way. I mean, yeah, that's going to have a championship, implication to it. But think of it this way too. The rest of the championship contenders are also going to have to race Jeb Burton. They're going to have to fight with him, whether it's on pit road or anything else. You got to fight the entire field, and everybody has to go through that. And I don't believe that, these playoff guys necessarily need to be given quarter entirely. Now, obviously, you don't want a situation where, they get wrecked. It's certainly not an intentional situation. But, of course, this leads to what happened there at the finish, where you had Sam Mayer hooking Jeb Burton afterwards, completely unapologetic about it in his interview. And this is always one of those situations that I really, really don't like, because I don't like when it gets down to this point there where, yeah, it's aggression and, drivers get frustrated. And in the moment, right after the checkered flag, just, common sense, short-circuited, and he just goes and swerves and hooks Burton into the wall. And it could have been a very serious incident. It could have been something that could have injured Jeb, and, it deserves to be treated seriously in that sense. If they're doing it, right up to the checkered flag, I don't see them having any problem with that. And indeed, we saw both of them trading, bumps and bangs around there. When the wreck first happened, I kind of thought it was the other way around. I thought Jeb Burton was really angry at Mayer. From the radio transmission that came up, I thought Burton came up and wrecked Mayer after the finish. And would it have been any different? No, it probably should be treated in the same way. We have a situation after the checkered flag, and Jordan Anderson took very much exception to that. The reason I feel hinky about talking about all this is that we should have drivers be allowed to be aggressive out there. We should have them be allowed to, express themselves and so forth. And there's been a real problem with that, even more in the Cup Series, and it's not been to the benefit of the sport. So people throwing around stuff about, like, is he going to get suspended? Is he going to get fined? Is it going to be a points penalty? This for Mayer, of course. Or do they do anything with Jeb Burton at all in this? Or is it just, looking at just the incident itself and at the end and looking at Mayer? I don't know, but it's always a messy situation. You don't want something where everything gets out of control. And indeed, much like we saw in the Cup race today, we saw a pretty orderly race in that one yesterday, very hard racing, everything at stake and people trying to work their way up there. But again, respectful racing in general. But again, you still have some drivers that are just going to not get along well with each other. I think that, in terms of their attitudes on the track, I think Jeb and Sam are two very hard-headed drivers out there. They're two very determined competitors. They're winning drivers. I wouldn't sell Jeb short on his team. I think his team is every bit as good as the Haas factory team is this year. And so that's where they find themselves out there on the same piece of racetrack, battling each other. But yeah, you don't want to have a situation either where drivers are wrecking each other, certainly after the checkered flag. And certainly I think if we had a situation here where Sam Mayer spun Jeb Burton and he didn't hit him in the wall, maybe just looped him around, like something like Carl Edwards did with Kyle Busch at Bristol back in the day. If we just had a situation like that, something situation like that, I think that would have been pretty harmless. I think the reason it's more egregious is the fact that Burton hit the wall with the driver's side, and that could have been a more serious situation. I think that's where there does need to be kind of a judgment call on this and get the full context of it. And so I think in that respect, yeah, I mean, this is more serious. But yeah, I think if Mayer in that instant, even the same exact circumstances with everything else the same, if he just went up there and he spun Jeb and nobody hit him and he just spun him, I'd be like, well, who cares? Like, I mean, it's the end of the race. As long as he just wasn't spun into traffic and hit by somebody else, then we'd have a situation there. That would have been different. So, and it's a judgment call, and NASCAR and judgment calls are always a very hinky thing, and I'm not a big fan of it either. And, that's kind of where that is. But, it's disappointing. I do think Mayer's in the wrong for that. And, again, where do we place it? Do we place it in the same context as getting, right reared on a much faster track, like the Bubba Wallace and Kyle Larson deal, or the David Gilliland and Juan Pablo Montoya deal at Texas, where it's a very fast track, or, something like that, or Carl Edwards and Brad Keselowski at Atlanta. Again, very, very fast track, very serious consequences in that sense. Is it the same thing at a Martinsville track where it's the playoffs, where it's this and all that? We'll see. I could see it going either way. I really could. But Mayer's probably going to get some penalty from this. It feels that way, but again, I don't, as to him being suspended or something like that, I'm not so sure about that. But we'll see. It just, I think there's some mitigating factors in there, that could probably be looked at the same time. But again, I could be wrong. They could just throw the book at him too, and maybe they want to make an example out of somebody. That's up to the sanctioning body to figure out there too. The playoff drivers were certainly front row center, and we saw some real drama there because some of them were so far back in the pack. Of course, Allgaier already locked in with Zilich coming into this. 2 spots still remained open. You get Brandon Jones and Sheldon Creed up there challenging the other contenders and trying to get the best run that they could get. But I mean, my goodness, what they were able to pull off here with Jesse Love and Carson Kvapil. Love losing a lap at one point was just an absolutely crazy deal there. Just dropping back in the pack and almost getting an incident there with Takuma Koga, who was among your last place contenders earlier in the event. Really a really difficult deal there as well. Let's see. And let's see here. So, and again, I'm double checking myself because I still have to always, I have to kind of reel this in here and try to figure out where all this shakes out. So, because we had Carson Kvapil and Jesse Love both made it in, right? Like that was the situation. It seems so unusual that both of them got in there. But of course the tiebreaker and things coming down, to the very end of it. Just a really wild situation. Would not have been what I expected here. But again, you got the Chevy sweep of it. You got so many guys that were just like right in the thick of it and that needed to make it up there. Yeah, it was tricky. I'm just noticing in the chat here, people mentioning Ward Burton being in this situation. Yeah, he had a couple ones. You always hear about the one at Bristol night race with him and Dale Jr. and him throwing the heel guards at Junior coming by. But yeah, same thing with Jerry Nadeau at Kansas. You're right about that, Andrew, as well. So that was very much part of that too. But yeah, here, let's just look at the bottom here. Yeah, I mean, again, it was. I liked that in the Xfinity Series race, you saw a lot out of the people that were very close to kind of bumping their way in there, trying to get back up there. With seeing both, Brandon Jones and Sammy Smith just looking, really strong out there. Smith again with the second place finish, right in the mix of it. Brandon Jones looked like he was going to come back from his altercation with Ty Gibbs and actually be able to lock this in. He kept a smile on his face in his interview. You could tell how frustrated he is for how many times, at least with the Gibbs team, that he's been close to getting into the next round here. It doesn't quite happen this time, especially given the fact that Jones is a past Phoenix winner. That's another thing you have to kind of look at with this format too, is just every team's going to have a great Phoenix car that they're going to try to set aside in case they make the championship for. But some of these guys where they're past winners there, that's another one to look at the same time. But let's see here. But yeah, I was impressed with Creed. I didn't know how Creed stayed up there at the end when Sam Mayer was dropping back. Creed seemed to hang on to that top 5 well. But again, Haas Factory team blanked on this. With Burton in the 6th spot, Sam Mayer in 7th, Dean Thompson in 8th. Dean Thompson's been so impressive this year over at the Sam Hunt Racing effort. I'm really pleased to see him do so well after how many struggles he had in trucks. Still looking for that first win, but that'll come. I mean, if you're able to get top 10s this regularly through a quarter of his starts this year, that's a fantastic start there. So that's really good to see. Zilich in 9th, and then Justin Bonsignor. I started to talk about this earlier. One of your last car Xfinity Series contenders for this next week. After a couple of last place finishes, one of which at Rockingham where he crashed and then was disqualified, and then also had an engine failure at Pocono. We've had no drivers with more than 2 last place finishes in the Xfinity Series, and that's left things very, very wide open here as well. Actually, it'd probably be helpful if I just showed this on screen. Let me move stuff around here, and I'll bring this here, and we'll go into this. So I've kind of worked on this chart here last night, and to kind of bring things up. Let's see, I'll put it kind of in the middle of the screen. Hopefully that shows well. And it's a little bit big. Can I get it on there? All right, let's see. Second screen on here. Yeah, okay. So here's kind of the scenarios here for the Xfinity Series Championship. So on the one end, we had Thomas Annunziata getting his 2nd last place finish of the year, his first since the Las Vegas race. An unfortunate deal. He had a great paint scheme. I liked, it was just black and white with the silver numbers. Ryan Daly did a real number on that one, and it stood out nicely. Unfortunately, the rear gear failed right at the end of one of the stages, and he ended up having a bit of a stack up behind him on the front straightaway with Daniel Dye and Jeremy Clements. Unfortunately, ended his night there. So the first time the number 70 is finished last in a Xfinity race at Martinsville, and he now joins this battle here at the same time. So our Xfinity Series Last Car Championship has, I believe, is it 7 drivers? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, 7 drivers. Parker Retzlaff, still your leader with 2 last place finishes, 6 bottom 5s, and 10 bottom 10s. And so I got to kind of look at the rest of this group here and, who is potentially going to be able to be a contender. So what I did here is showed what would happen if any of these drivers got a bottom 10, a bottom 5, or a last place finish in the next race, and where they would stack up here as well. Basically, any of the other drivers here, which you got Daniel Dye, Christian Eckes, Thomas Annunziata, Justin Bonsignor, William Sawalich, can clinch the championship by finishing last at Phoenix. So for them, the story is very simple. Anything short of that is not going to work, and that's included with this down here for Daniel Dye, I've mentioned. That if Parker Retzlaff does not get a bottom 10, it would force a bottom 15 tiebreaker with Parker Retzlaff, and Retzlaff already leads that over Dye, so that gap would just increase here. So again, Dye would still need to get a last place finish in Phoenix to take the title. So that's where up here, Parker Retzlaff on the other side of it too, a bottom 5 or a bottom 10 is not going to be enough because a last place finish in each of these cases would best him on that because they're tied, and you got drivers that have 3 last place finishes versus or 2 last place finishes versus just 1. One driver that finds him in a difficult situation too is Anthony Alfredo here at the bottom. Even if he gets a last place finish, Parker Retzlaff could take the title back if he merely finishes in the bottom 5. So this may well be one we don't even know what the result's going to be until after the results of inspection. So if we have any potential disqualifications, that could turn this very much on its head. But all these other ones here that show lose, these are scenarios that are just not going to be enough. So if these drivers don't get a bottom 5 or don't get a bottom 10, or they just stay right exactly where they are, which is where these numbers are in bold, that could very much be the situation there too. The other interesting thing is not all these drivers are going to be eligible because they're probably not going to be entered. Thomas Annunziata, I believe this Martinsville race was his last start of the year. Leland Honeyman, I believe, is expected to run that car next week. If that's the case, and he does not run for Mario Gosselin, like what we saw back at the Roval, where we saw both these drivers entered in the race, that would be the end of his championship battle, and he'd be eliminated. And then you go to Bonsignor and Sawalich. Is Bonsignor going to drive in Sawalich's relief again for the championship race, or is Sawalich going to come back after his injury last week and run that race? It looks like Bonsignor is not going to be in the race because Almirola, again, is looking to clinch the Owners' Championship in the 19. So last I heard is that he's going to be in that car. So we're probably going to have at least 2 of these drivers, and it'll come down to about 5 drivers going for the championship. So this will be what I'll be looking at the end of the day there for the LASCAR championship there too. So some different scenarios here throughout the field, and that's going to be very interesting to find out at the same time. So we'll switch back here to the stream. There we go. Let me pull this back over and kind of look at that. So I'll have some more of on the clinch scenarios after we get the Cup Series locked up. I need to break this down here for the Cup side too, because it looks like, again, we're going to have a 3-way battle on the Cup side next week, so we will find out. Takuma Koga, I mentioned him briefly. Rough deal for him in this race. I mean, my goodness, you make your oval track debut in the Xfinity Series in the penultimate race of the championship, and I'm so glad he didn't get involved in any kind of incident. He very nearly got in a wreck with Jesse Love at one point, where Love had to dodge around him after Koga got the inside curb there in turn 1. For those of you not familiar with him, he's a driver from the ARCA Menard Series West. You may have seen him in some of the articles that our Ben Schneider has written on the website here as well. He made his Xfinity debut at Portland earlier this year, also driving for the Joey Gase team, and this time around looking to have an oval track start. And very interesting, bilingual as well. His spotter spoke both Japanese and English, so actually listening to his radio traffic was very interesting. They were really trying to kind of encourage him to save the brakes, make sure he was more aggressive on the entry of the corner, and staying up against the wall in the back straightaway, just trying to get the usual rhythm that the rest of the field has, and it's still something different for him, despite the fact that the ARCA West Series competes on short tracks as well. Still very much a challenge there. But again, he did a decent enough job, lost a couple laps early on, stayed out of the way. I didn't hear the officials get frustrated with him or anything like that, but they did have some mechanical issues. A carburetor problem ends up taking him out of the race, and he finished next to last. Brennan Poole had the DVP expire on him in turns 3 and 4 after a wreck there between him and Brendan Butterbean Queen, and Jeremy Clements running out the bottom 5. Clements coming back out after a brake fire on the right front. Crew sounded like they were hustling. Sounds like it was all hands on deck there for Clements' team. The fire actually reignited in the garage area, and they had to attack it once more. Sounded like they actually replaced the brake pads. At least they were indicating they were getting brake pads from the team's pit box there back to the garage area, and were able to get him back out there and climbed almost out of the bottom 5. Daniel Dye being just a few laps ahead of him there in the 33rd spot. So a decent recovery there, and kudos to the Clemens team. A lot of those guys, again, were previously working with Johnny Davis's team at JD Motorsports before they shut down. I think they did a fine job out there rallying at the same time. We saw Brad Perez back in the race, finishing in the 31st spot. I believe this is the scene of his Truck Series debut a couple of years ago as well. So kudos to him on that. But as to the championship 4, again, take your pick. I think as long as it's a Chevrolet is going to be the big thing too. But Zilich is going to be really interesting to watch. And, if he can pull it off, you got the defending champion in Allgaier, and you got Quapple and Love. Love has been very impressive since taking over from Sheldon Creed in that 2 car, kind of making it his own. I saw one of his rare, bad days this year back at Sears Point when he had a mechanical issue out there that ended up putting him in last place. And Carson Quapple has been so close to pulling off his first win. I saw comments earlier here in the chat about the possibility of having somebody win a championship that hasn't won a race yet this year. And that championship, that element is still there in both the Xfinity and the Truck Series, and Quapple there too. But Quapple has been so close. I'm very surprised that he hasn't won a race yet this year. It seems like he was so close, even last year when he almost won at Dover, and seemed like he was going to, take that away there in the 88 car. And he's come close a number of times, just hasn't quite been in the right place. I would be sure he should pull off a win next year. But the championship battle, I mean, it's just going to be a positive experience for him to be able to, compete under, intense circumstances. And indeed, getting that 18th place finish out there, very reminiscent of an old school championship battle where it used to be, a guy just hang on and hopefully not lose their entire point lead in the championship race. But in this case here, doing just enough there to make it to the next round. Just in an absolute hornet's nest. Big kudos to CW. I think they did an actually pretty good job with their camera work on this race. I like that you could see how rough pit road was. I like that they had a replay of, how the traffic got stacked up in front of Quapple, because I almost thought he was like riding the wall there at the end. Obviously he wasn't, and we saw the replay showing very clearly he wasn't. But the traffic got like 3 and 4 wide in front of him, and he stuck it in there on the outside in turns 3 and 4, and anything could have happened at that point. And given how narrow these margins were, if something just went a little bit sideways, that was going to eliminate him there. So kudos to him on the recovery there too. But yeah, again, I think it was interesting to see how that played out there. But yeah, very happy for happy for those other competitors up there. It was a race hard, very hard fought event there too. Love the Halloween paint schemes too. I got to say, I'm not sure exactly which one to say is a favorite. I mean, certainly Josh Williams with the Little Shop of Horrors plant on there with the bright green, that looked really nice. And then it's pretty cool. Hopefully we'll see something like that for the truck series where the race is actually going to be on Halloween night. That'll be fun. I haven't heard about them doing any Halloween paint schemes there in that series. So I don't know if that's going to happen one way or the other, but we'll find out. It'll be something to look at the same time. Yeah, there we go. Yep, exactly. Kind of talking about this at the same time. Oh, Mike Harmon's team's going to be there at Phoenix. Fantastic. Oh, just look at Bubbington's post there as well. Thank you for tuning in. And yeah, I'll be very excited to see you guys out there. I know you had, you had Ryan Ellis drive your car once, and you had Brad Perez as well. Yeah, I'd love to see you guys back out there. I haven't seen Harmon since Rockingham, so that would be exciting. And yeah, you guys mentioning, there's been other times where, you had Crafton win the championship without winning a race. Yeah, that'll be another thing to look at. Is it Xfinity and trucks? I don't mean to put you on the spot there, Bubbington, but is it like, do you know if the truck series team's coming out, or is it just Xfinity? I don't know if you're willing to say or not, but either way, it'll be great to see Harmon back out there too. So that'll be something good to follow at the same time. Alrighty. Yeah. Excuse me. But again, I think the Xfinity series, so that'll be something to kind of look forward to next week. I think it's going to be a great race. I see the comments there on that as well. I agree. I think it's going to be a great Xfinity Series championship race one way or the other. I think Zilich is going to be very, very tough. He's going to just, click in the gear and he's very relaxed. I loved his sense of humor there when he was standing by Sam Mayer's car and he was talking to one of the officials or somebody on the teams. Like, did they ask you to stand here? I mean, so much fun. Zilich is wonderful for the sport, and I'm so excited to see what he's going to do in the Cup Series next year, and how much of this is going to translate. I mean, yes, the Cup Series has had a history, unfortunately, where drivers that excelled in the Xfinity Series struggled in Cup. You think about David Green and Randy LaJoie and others like that, or they just didn't want to put up with the demands of running in the Cup Series, like LaJoie in that sense. But yeah, I mean, my goodness, his road course excellence, and the performances he had with Shane Van Gisbergen this year, like at Watkins Glen and Sears Point as well. It's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be fun. So, but yeah, hopefully he can cap things off with the championship next week. The wind seems to be blowing his direction, but it's a competitive field. It's a very competitive group there. And these other guys are going to be very tough there too. So I think we're going to have a good race next Saturday. I'll be very interested to see who's going to be in it. Because, of course, for one thing, the LASCAR Championship's going to hinge on that, too. But also just, who's, which teams just in general are going to pop up. Because sometimes we get some interesting faces out there. Akinori Ogata always seem to be running the fall race at Phoenix. I know he's got his own truck series program now. And come to think of it, we haven't seen that program out there in a while. I don't know if they're going to run there at Phoenix. But that would be cool to see because we haven't seen that team in a bit. We'll see how things shake out there. Congrats to Harrison Burton on the pole, finishing 11th in the race there, doing a solid job in that one. I think did a fine job there too. And yeah, more to look forward to here as well. So anyway, I'm gonna have some water here, and we'll get into the truck series here in a little bit. Alrighty, let's see here. Yeah, I guess Ryan Sieg was another driver that was a bit frustrated in the Xfinity race there too, but yeah, I think it's probably just as much about just a difficult season. I mean, my goodness, how many more times is Ryan Sieg going to be so close to pulling off a win, leading all those laps at Rockingham, and just having these incidents along the way? That's another element to the Sam Mayer story that I don't think is getting enough emphasis. I know that they talked about the Talladega wreck. Mayer was very pointed about that and talking about it with Jeff Burton and Jordan Anderson. And indeed, the way the wreck played out, to the untrained eye, I mean, yeah, it looks like Jeb Burton just for no reason kind of went up the track, swept up, and just eliminated a bunch of cars. But he wouldn't have been doing that if there wasn't a stack up in front of him. I know we talked about this last week as well. But unfortunately, at that point, once the wreck starts, it's kind of got its own momentum, and everything just kind of, flies apart at that point. But the result of that wreck had Sam Mayer in last place. And, of course, the worst possible situation, you get the fewest possible points. They almost cleared the crash clock, and there was a lot of frustration Mayer had from that, too. I mean, that deserves to be kind of considered in the context of what happened with Mayer there, too. And I'm trying to be partial in this. I know I mentioned how much I've enjoyed following the Haas Factory team storyline. And again, it's not to excuse anything, but also just to understand what else was going on there, too. So, I mean, obviously, getting in a situation where you're wrecking another driver after the checkered flag is not going to be a good way to get your opinion across there. But it's another way to certainly, another thing to kind of consider there at the same time. So I get his frustration, but it also doesn't entitle him to just kind of be, everybody gets out of his way or something like that. You'd like to think that, the rest of the traffic's going to give some people room if they're battling for the lead in anything. But it's a little different where you have this playoff system and you have multiple races on the track. And maybe, again, the Xfinity race is a perfect example of this. One battle is going to be about 20th place, another one's going to be about 5th place, and the other one's going to be for the lead. I mean, do you expect the whole field to be alerted to that and be able to running, and also, run in a controlled manner and not get in a wreck or anything? That's way, way too much to demand on these people. It's already hard enough, I'm sure, for these spotters to communicate things, even for the playoff drivers. I can't imagine how much needs to be balanced. Again, this is where we just go back to the full season championship, and who the championship contenders are, and it's a large scale thing. And, maybe it's only one or two guys at the end of the year instead of keeping track of, 8, 12, 16 different people. It's another worthy element to consider there at the same time. And the good news is a lot of times when you have a championship like that, think back to even 2011, even under this format, you'll have guys like, Tony Stewart and Carl Edwards. They'll separate themselves from the field. And then go back to 92, Bill Elliott and Alan Kowicki doing the same thing. So I don't know. I don't mean to hammer that much, but it's very much hand in hand with talking about a lot of this week. And this is the same thing I want to kind of lead into and mention into the truck series battle here too. There was a lot of frustration over Caden Honeycutt and the incident with Raja Caruth, and I get it totally. And if memory serves, I think Raja came just as close, painfully close, to getting into the championship for last year, and then had something happen and ended up getting wrecked out there. And I hate it for him. It's a terrible situation. He's been very consistent this year. Would very deservedly fit in the championship four. But unfortunately, these are the rules that are in place. You got to have these good runs when you get them. You can't have a bad run when it happens there. I don't think there was anything intentional with Caden Honeycutt battling Raja Caruth. And indeed, if we want to talk about the context of non-playoff drivers racing playoff drivers hard, you got to imagine that playoff drivers are going to race each other very hard. We saw that today with Blaney and Byron. We saw that yesterday, with Zilich and the others up there, and Sammy Smith and so forth. And we saw it again here, very much in the same situation. And I think that, again, there was just some tight racing there. Was it early in the event? Yeah. But again, think about it with Honeycutt's perspective. This is a guy that, again, drove for Nice Motorsports at the beginning of this year, lost that ride when it got revealed he's going to Tricon next year, got a one-off start with Randy Young's team to even stay in championship contention back at Watkins Glen. And then after Stuart Friesen gets injured, he gets in the 52 truck after Friesen won at Michigan to get that truck into the playoffs. And now they're trying to get that in there. That doesn't excuse reckless driving. Just understand that there's a whole hell of a lot going on behind the scenes for both those teams. And I think that's what needs to be kind of remembered here. This isn't this isn't a situation where it was, anything, I think disrespectful there. And Raja was very, I think, seemed to recognize that as well in his interview. And I don't blame him for being disappointed. I'm not saying you shouldn't be disappointed. Yeah, it's an awful situation. And it's an awful situation that this point system creates. And it's very similar to what, again, what we had, yesterday with Sam Mayer and Jeb Burton. And the reason that Mayer was so upset at Burton, because it's like, oh, I have to make sure I advance to this round because this is what the rules are and so forth. And it's the same situation here. And yeah, and unfortunately, it's going to be brutal no matter what, because the rules state that you got to have 4 guys go for the championship, and you could have 8 people that are deserving of being in there, and just, every little thing happens. And sometimes that little thing ends up being pretty big. So I hate it for Raja Karuth. Again, I think he's, he's sure to be, really, really consistent in the sport. I love that he's got this part-time deal there for the 88 car next year. And it sounds like he's going to be complementing that with driving for other teams at the same time. And that's going to be really exciting to follow. I think that's going to be really interesting week to week to see how well he can, do that, much like Ross Chastain did with JD Motorsports and the Chip Ganassi deal a couple years ago. That's a difficult but not unprecedented way of going for a championship there at the same time. Indeed, Joe Weatherly drove for multiple different teams and winning his championships. And that's a very old school way of doing it. And it'll be interesting to see how he's able to do that, especially, seeing how well the 88 team's done this year with whoever's been in the car, even with Kligerman in the Daytona win. So we'll see what happens there too. But I get the frustration. I share that. I remember what it was like when I had my favorite drivers out there and something bad would happen to them. It sucks. It sucks. And that's part of the sport. And that's the thing. You could have a driver that's in tremendous physical shape. You can have the best team out there, best engines, best pit stops, and then something just happens. Tire gets cut down, bumping with another truck out there, and you wreck, and it's just, you end up next to last. Doesn't mean you had the, second worst truck in the field. Doesn't mean it's the second worst driver. It's not. And that's the other reason, yet another reason that the playoffs don't work. But hey, again, it keeps coming back to it, but that's part of the same story from all this year. So that's another way to look at it there. But again, there's the future is very bright for Raja, and I think if for his fans out there, I think that should be something to look forward to at the same time. At the same blush too, Lane Riggs missing the championship after finishing third in the race. Tiebreaker lost to Caden Honeycutt because Honeycutt got this second place finish, and that was the best finish of this round. Probably the most controversial rule in the playoffs that we've had to this point. And this has come up time and time again, and it never changes. Maybe we're heading to that. They all know it's the best finish of the round, and we go into that. And it doesn't have anything to do with how many wins you've had to this point. It doesn't have anything to do with all that. It's just the best finish in this round. Lane Riggs has easily been the second best driver of this year's Truck Series season. I don't think we can really even argue that. Corey Heim's been in a galaxy all his own, and we see, the points and everything reflect that, the wins, of course. But Lane Riggs has been right up there, and he's picked up right where he left off late last season when he missed the playoffs and then kicked into gear and won Milwaukee and won those other races there. It was very impressive, and I think he's been very solid this year. But again, it's those little moments along the way, and I think Lane recognized this in his interview, which I thought was very interesting. When he was talking about just things feeling off in this race and not feeling like even earning a spot in the championship 4. And you think back to the Roval, where he and Corey Heim get in the exact same accident and unfortunately didn't suffer the same damage. Unfortunate for Riggs, that is. He suffered much more serious suspension damage, dropped him back in the pack. Corey Heim climbs back up there and takes the lead from Brent Cruz, and holds off and wins that. And I'd say that would be, of all the wins that Heim's had this year and as dominant as he's been, that was a championship drive. Absolutely. I would put that in the same category as what Denny Hamlin was doing out there in Kansas before that, the late race cautions and everything went crazy with Chase Elliott winning. It was a championship drive, and it was something you would look at if they do win the championship. That would define that. Unfortunately, the system still doesn't care about those moments, and it may well be that we have this show next week at this same time, and we may well be talking about Corey Heim not winning the championship, and that's unfortunate. Hopefully that does change. But Caden Honeycutt's story, I would encourage people that are upset about the incident there to not be as frustrated about him. I think there's a lot that's going on there. That's very interesting. That Hallmark team has been so close to winning the championship. I remember talking with them at Sears Point when Stuart Friesen went to a backup truck out there, and the team was saying he's feeling like this is the year, and I'm sure felt the same way this year, and had that awful accident in that big block modified race just a few weeks ago. It would be tremendous. I mean, any of these people would be interesting, champions. And while it would suck to have Corey Heim lose the championship, on that, I mean, again, that's the format. That's the format's fault, and that's where, the focus needs to be. Same thing with Lane Riggs missing the cut. Same thing, it's the format's fault. Ideally, if you had a full season deal, Heim would have a big lead, but Riggs would be right up there. Or maybe he'd be fighting for second or third in points or something like that. That's where we need to get back to. And I think these are all examples of that, and I think we would look at this, very differently and have a more complete look at the field. I haven't even talked about the last place finisher, for example, in this Truck Series race. And this was also an unusual set of circumstances. Now, the Truck Series championship for the last car battle is now down to 3 drivers. And much like the Xfinity Series, it's going to be down to who is actually entered in the race. It could well be over already, and we may not know it. We may just have somebody declared the winner tomorrow when the entry lists get posted. So we'll find out if that's going to be the story. But Clayton Green, I feel so terrible for this guy here. He had 3 straight last place finishes, driving for Josh Reaume's effort there, where they didn't have a sponsor, and they had to do basically start and park efforts. They basically were. Exiting the race in the opening laps, finishing back in the pack there too. Really, rough deal for him, especially for a driver that's new to the circuit, and you got to kind of, you take your lumps and you just try to get the best run that you can there. And, it's a difficult deal. This week around here, he got a sponsor from a construction company, this Royal Vista Incorporated sponsorship on the 2. They had a beautiful paint scheme out there, gets in a wreck in practice, tears up the rear of the truck, and the team has to piece the thing back together. They did a tremendous job out there getting that truck back into one piece, and got back out there and could actually start the race. But unfortunately, ended up just going immediately to the garage area at the start. And we saw this before. I know it seems really unusual. It is unusual in the sense that it happened without even completing any of the pace laps, just immediately going to the garage area. But in the Truck Series in recent years, we've seen a couple times where this has happened. Jordan Anderson, who, again, you think back to the Xfinity Series race the other day when he was a Truck Series driver at Eldora in 2016. He had a truck that was absolutely beat to nothing, kind of like Norm Benning's truck was in 2013. And still started the race, had to pull off the track because the trucks just can't keep up a minimum speed. We had a couple races at Kansas where the last place finisher had damage. Spencer Davis was one of those drivers, had right side damage, had to go behind the wall. Joey Gase swapped into Jennifer Jo Cobb's backup truck because that truck was damaged by Cobb during practice and had to exit the race there as well. So perhaps more common in the Truck Series where the body work on the trucks is in a very very traditional sense with the sheet metal and so forth. These teams, I mean, it's remarkable what they do to piece these things back together to even present to start the race. Cause you got to go through inspection and all that. It's remarkable what they do. I know we covered Most Sport a few years ago. We saw Jordan Anderson get in a wreck out there, and they had to rebuild the entire rear of the truck with even more limited equipment because they're up north of the border. They don't have that much equipment to work with, but they managed to piece that thing together and present it onto the starting grid. And that was tremendous there too. But unfortunately for Green in this case, he ends up with his fourth last place finish without even starting the race. It's interesting it wasn't listed as it did not start because he didn't. I mean, I listened to the radio there. The spotter was literally talking him through which garage entrance to take, where to pull up to the hauler, and you could see the truck parked behind the hauler on the backstretch during the pace laps, but he ended up loaded up and out of there. And again, a big thanks to Steven Toronto for his pictures that he shared this weekend of all the last place battles there as well, and showing that they were loading up the truck there in the early laps, and made for an unusual story. Definitely an unusual last place battle there as well. That was over really before the race started, but that ends up being his fourth last place finish of the season, and that leads all drivers going into next week for the championship race. He takes the lead from Norm Benning, who had 3 last place finishes, but 11 bottom 5s and 11 bottom 10s, which is way more than Clayton Green. And those are the tiebreakers that are so critical in our last car championships there too. If Norm Benning finishes last next week in Phoenix, he takes the championship. Doesn't matter where Green finishes, even if he gets in the bottom 5, even if he's next to last. That's going to be the difference there. The question will be, is Norm Benning going to run the race? We haven't really seen him run the Phoenix race in recent years. We saw him a couple of years ago. He drove, what was it? I think it was an Al Neese backup truck out there. Unfortunately failed to qualify. There's that element too. You know, you qualify for the race too. How many entrants are we going to have on the truck series side of things? But I haven't heard one way or the other if he's running it. He usually does run Martinsville. Again, Phoenix is a bit more rare. This could be over there too. The other contender is Stephen Malazzi, who is one of Clayton Green's teammates. Of course, the Outback Steakhouse server and law student who's driving the number the 22 and the 2 out there. Steve had 3 last place finishes, 7 bottom 5s and 7 bottom 10s. And if he gets an entry into this week's race, it could well be a battle of teammates. So if Benning isn't injured and Malazzi is, as well as Green, and we've seen the 2 and the 22 sometimes have both those drivers in the field. I think at Richmond, they were both racing against each other. That could be your battle there as well. And again, if Malazzi gets last, he would take the championship lead from Green at the last second. And so things could be very dramatic next Friday on Halloween night when things set up out there as well. So that's going to be really interesting to see there at the same time. So we'll find out what happens there too. But again, your top 10 at this side here, Corey Hyman winning the race, Caden Honeycutt in second, Lane Riggs third, Brent Cruz in fourth. Good to see him following up his great run at the Roval. Corey LaJoy in fifth, Chandler Smith in sixth, Ty Majeski in seventh, Tanner Gray, Tyler Ankrum, and Brendan Queen rounding out the top 10. Giovanni Ruggiero, your Talladega winner, just outside the top 10 and 11th. Hated for Grant Enfinger, was hoping they'd be able to have a good run in this race here. Just wasn't meant to be there, finishing in the 12th spot there. So he will not go for the championship for that week too. Again, it's just a brutal situation, and I'm not sure if that brutality is becoming worth it anymore. But we'll see what the story is coming up there. Looking through the rest of the field, I saw some comments here about some other drivers that were having solid runs here further back. Patrick Staropoli, who ran double duty with the Xfinity Series. I think he got top 20 in both races, 15th in the Truck Series side. Jack Wood up in 13th. I believe he was the last place finisher at Phoenix last year. So a solid run for him there too. Frankie Muniz, 23rd, finishing on the lead lap there. Great effort for him. Good to see him back behind the wheel after his wrist injury this year. So a solid run for him. Casey Mears, mentioning his 600th career start, finishing 24th that night. Everybody behind there pretty much having a rough deal from there. Brake issues for Matt Crafton towards the end. Connor Mosack in a crash. Daniel Hemrick with the engine let go. That team, really, the McAnally team, they just dug deep to try to get the best run they could. But, man, that thing was overheating. And it's so hard once that chain reaction starts to try to get a good run out there. Alan Waller, looks like he finished, completed as many laps as he could in this entry. Alan Waller actually is, making a couple other starts earlier this year, had exhaustion in those other 2 starts, and Josh Reaume, the team owner, had to drive in place of him. as far as I heard, he didn't have to step in for Allen this time. Unfortunately, Allen's still involved in an incident there that knocked him out of the race in the 32nd spot. Norm Benning made it into, I believe he made it into the final stage there. Unfortunately, still flagged off the track for not maintaining minimum speed. The team was radioed about the issues with their splitter and trying to clear minimum speed there as well. I know he went down pit road a couple of times, trying to kind of keep up the pace there, making some adjustments. It's just such a difficult situation to find yourself in because tire pressure changes and adding tape and stuff is only going to do so much. Especially with the disparity with the engines out there. Just hoping Norm is doing okay there still. Good to see him with all smiles there on pit road after that harrowing situation at Talladega last week. So we'll see how things move forward with for him. But again, not sure if he's going to run Phoenix next week or not. But still an early exit there for Clayton Green there at the same time. Let's see. I don't remember if I had statistics on drivers not completing a lap at Martinsville. I may need to update that in the article. And I didn't really touch on Taylor Gray too much there, the winner of the Xfinity Series race. I mean, again, yeah, having the win taken away from him in the spring there, great to see him recover from that. And also a driver, working his way through the Truck Series too, kind of finding his footing up there. Really good to see at the same time there as well. But let's see here. Logan Bearden. Yeah, most of the other competitors more or less covered here at the same time. But, I have to say, in general, you kind of had a little bit of everything in these races. Truck Series broadcast still wasn't very good. Doing it remotely was not a smart idea. And it makes me wonder why all the playoffs, why all the gimmicks, if you don't even have a group that's interested in, what's happening during these races. Because again, much like Talladega, you have just a little bit of everything. I like that at least their graphics department was alert enough to have a graphic showing, how close the points were and how they were changing at the end. So we could anticipate that tiebreaker there at the end with Honeycutt. That was done decently well. I'll give them some credit on that. I'll just tell you this. I'm just happy to be covering the race in person so I don't have to listen to the Truck Series broadcast be butchered there at the end. Xfinity Series 2, I'm pleased with, again, the Xfinity broadcast was good. I'm excited by what they're doing to the Xfinity send-off, where they're going to have the third stage of the race be commercial free. I think that's a really cool idea. Kudos to the Xfinity Series. I think this period where the Xfinity Series has been that name, its branding, it's such a great evolution in the sport. In that time, we've really seen it develop its own identity and have some wonderful racing out there. All while we've seen the Cup Series, invaders really scale back. Where even guys like Kyle Busch or Brad Keselowski or Joey Logano are not as much of a factor in there. And I hope that going forward, and again, we got one more race for them, of course, that's going to be the way that sponsorship is going to be remembered. The way it's going to be honored is that it's really, it did make, names are made here. It was kind of, mocking when it was the Nationwide Series, because that was back in the era where it was the very peak of having, Cup Series invaders and Cup Series champions winning nationwide championships. And it was a real dark era. It was unfortunate, and it really stymied a lot of driver development. As much as I'm sure these drivers that could get into the series would love to compete against Cup guys, it was too much. And it was nice seeing just during this Xfinity Series era. I've certainly enjoyed it more. As somebody that grew up not really enjoying the Busch Series for the same reason, because you still had, Cup Series regulars, kind of stomping in there, even though a lot of the, the Busch races, like I've seen in 500 Days, for example, have been absolute barn burners. I don't think there's been a bad one yet in this series, and I've been watching more videos on that to get that script ready. It's been wonderful in the Xfinity Series, and I'm excited for when the O'Reilly sponsorship comes on board. It's going to be an adjustment, calling it the O'Reilly Series and all that, but I think it's going to be, I hope they pick up right where they left off here and, be a good presenting sponsor for that series going forward, because I think there's a lot of wonderful talent in that series, and I hope that I hope it continues to grow. I hope that it keeps helping out there. Yeah, the O'Reilly Auto Parts series. Exactly. It's going to be a real mess. I'm going to need at least a couple months into the season. I'm going to be probably on this show still be calling it the Xfinity series. So we'll see how it goes from there. But that'll be another way to look at that. Alrighty. Let's see. I think that's most of what I have in these two. If you guys have any questions from this weekend that I didn't cover here, because I know I'm kind of throwing a lot at you here from all three races, but we'll certainly get into those at the same time. We'll do some trivia. I have something for show and tell here as well on our show tonight, so we'll definitely be jumping into that. And we'll kind of take things from there. So let me see. Let me check my notes first, actually, before we get into the trivia part, and we'll check that out. Boop, boop. All right. Thank you, folks, for tuning in here tonight. I know it's a little on the longer side here for the show, but plenty to talk about here at the same time. Where's my notes? I don't really have much more on that. I guess we could talk a little bit about the lawsuit there. Basically, I don't really have too much really to say on that other than, for all the talk last week about, mentioning that the summary judgment hearing isn't like just a small bump in the road. It seems like, at least I'm still not hearing anything new from, the team side of it, but they're certainly determined, and that may well be enough to kick this thing to December. So, I suppose in trial, we'll finally hear what all this amazing evidence is about monopolistic practices. Now, it's not just mean words said here and there from, attorneys in an adversarial situation. I hope we get some more information on that. But again, we'll find out. I mean, it may well be, eye-opening here from there. But again, it's not the last obstacle. I mean, mediation, and all that. We'll see how far that goes and what other pretrial motions are figured out. Because again, it could be won or lost that way. And that's going to be very interesting. But we'll deal with that when we get down to it. I'll do the, let's see. Oh, goodness. Oh, I got some super chats here. Oh, thank you, folks, for the super chats as well. I'll check into those there as well when we get this. I'll do some trivia here and ask you guys which categories you'd like, and we'll jump into all those here at the same time. So thank you for tuning in here tonight. So once again, the categories are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card, bringing out the late 90s Trivial Pursuit. Can I get a little closer to the camera? There we go. There we go. I moved the camera a little closer here this week. I'm still perfecting the setup here. That'll probably be another reason we'll be doing shows this off season, so I can kind of get used to where everything is. I'm so glad to have the lights up there so they're not right in my face. So, because I look like I squint really easy, and I try to make sure so you can actually kind of see me a little bit better here too. I really like how this looks. This looks so much nicer on camera than it did before. I don't know why I didn't do this earlier. It was that. But again, big thanks to those of you in the Patreon, patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock for allowing me to do this here, because it's made things much easier here. So go ahead and let me know in the chat which categories you'd like, and we'll do a couple things here. I'll do show and tell first, and we'll do super chats a little bit later here on this. One video on my channel here is actually a two-part video, you may recall, was the story of the late Kenny Irwin Jr., who, of course, drove the Texaco Haviland car, went for Rookie of the Year in 1998, won Rookie of the Year, and eventually went over to the Felix Sabata's team and tragically lost his life in an accident at New Hampshire in July of 2000. One of the people I interviewed in that project, who was a tremendous help, was Eric, a big fan of Kenny's, who met him at the Phoenix Raceway, where we'll be next week. Back when he was running in the Truck Series back in 1997, met him out there and just became an instant fan of his there. And Eric and I, have been in touch there for many times since then. And again, he gave a wonderful interview of the fans' perspective of following Kenny in his career, kind of his thoughts on key moments in his career. So big thanks to him. And he also provided some great research materials that I added here, along with those provided by Brian Hallman at the BRH Racing Archives, that really kind of helped make that video come together there at the same time. And I received this just in the mail just this past week, and I wanted to show it to you. He shared something with me from his collection that was really, really cool of him. Check this out. This is a card from Kenny Irwin's rookie season, autographed by Kenny. It's the first thing I've ever had with Kenny's autograph on it, and a tremendous honor. I can't thank him enough here for sending this. Beautiful card here, press pass card from 98 in this case here as well. Really, really cool. It's got the, description from his career there on the back. And looks like him at Daytona there as well, just getting ready for either the duels or the Daytona 500 there in that white uniform that he had at the same time there too. So big thanks to Eric. I wanted to make sure to show it here on the show here, to send it out there. That will be an absolutely treasured part of the collection here at the Last Car headquarters. So I thought that was really cool. Let me see. Oh, we got call on inspection already? Okay, wow. I didn't think it was going to be that quick. But I guess, yeah, it's been almost 2 hours. So maybe that will be one other way to look at it here. There it is. Yes, this posted 22 minutes ago from Bob Pockris. Cup Tech complete. No issues. Byron is the winner. The championship 4 is Byron, Larson, Hamlin, and Briscoe. So it's going to be Gibbs versus Hendrick in the championship Sunday next week to round out championship weekend at Phoenix. So, yes, that's going to be very interesting. And, of course, that does lock in Briscoe's 3rd career Cup Series last place finish. And we'll have the points and the clinch scenarios for you both later tonight in the Cup Series article and this this Friday for entry list articles there as well. So it's going to be a very busy week, and we're going to get right to it here very soon as well. But yes, no, thank you. I apologize if some of you guys were already mentioning that earlier during my race review segment there of the cleared inspection, but certainly that's good news for everybody involved there as well. One thing I didn't mention, I hated it that Preston Pardis missed the race in Martinsville. They had a wonderful Halloween paint scheme there that would look great under the lights. Unfortunately, a bit of a lockup there on one of the tires ended up being consequential there to them missing the show there. But better luck for them in the future there as well. Pardis always running the road courses, but really kind of keeping his eye on Martinsville too. Kind of, again, that comparison between the road courses and the short tracks, kind of keeping consistent there at the same time. Let's see here. Not sure which category is leading, so go ahead and keep the categories going here at the same time. But I'll jump back into the super chats on here, and we'll do that here right now. All right, let's see here. Okay, first of all, first super chat here from Michael Jensen on here. Thank you again for your super chat here for $5. Trucks, nice to see in his 2 weeks back, Frankie Muniz has 2 lead lap finishes. Yes, absolutely agree. Wonderful, wonderful job there for Frankie. I mean, I forgot he got the lead lap finish at Talladega as well. Great rebound for him. And indeed, Phoenix is actually his home track next week. You recall a couple of years ago, I posted a picture of him in the garage area kind of talking with these other teams out there. And that was kind of when he was kind of getting introduced to the Ford program and kind of getting into that and kind of paved the way to the effort he has right now. Hopefully he can complete it in 3 in a row here at Phoenix and get a good finish out there. That would be a tremendous effort as well as for him and for that Josh Riom team. So thank you again for the super chat on that as well. Spencer Sandlin, thank you for your super chat for $11 for Corey Heim. So I see that right there. Thank you very much. No matter what happens to Heim at Phoenix, his win percentage for this year in trucks will be no lower than 44%, which is astronomical. And, very good point. And, a very good follow-up to what we were talking about earlier about the championship format in general. That, again, you have a driver that wins 44% of the races on a season, and that is a vast outlier. That is kicking the field's butt so much that, you are well beyond the capabilities of like other drivers that have accomplished that in one season, which is massive. And a typical champion is going to win far fewer races than that and still be a deserving champion, because that's just the way the whole season goes. They put together a great body of the work through the season, as Heim has. It's not to say that, for those 11 wins, he was just finishing last the other weeks. That certainly was not the case. He's been very impressive. In fact, does he still not have a DNF this year? I don't want to jinx him, but I mean, I think that's what they said, right? Let me look that up. Cup, Xfinity, and trucks. My goodness, yeah, 11 wins, 18 top fives, 20 top tens, and no DNFs. Basically had the point lead pretty much the entire year, except for the first couple of weeks. 7 poles. I mean, just outstanding. I mean, this is a caliber of dominance that should be rewarded with a season championship. Not to say it always is, but he's certainly earned it. My goodness, he was 3rd in points 2 years ago, 2nd in points last year, and then this time around here. I mean, we'll see what happens. But I mean, my goodness, it's been a remarkable run, and it deserves to be remembered as such. And championship or none. And it's absurd that we even need to say that, but I hope we're heading towards a future where, that's not going to need to be said. It should be a formality at this point, that the person that's that dominant, prevails in that sense. So, my goodness. And for a guy that really he just still doesn't have anything locked up for next year too, right? I saw the interview with Jimmy Spencer this week where he was talking up Heim and Zilich and Ross Chastain as some of the drivers he likes following. It's just astounding. But hopefully something works out, there on that end too. But yes, Spencer, thank you for your super chat there as well. Oh goodness, right? A few of you guys. No, thank you so much, folks. You didn't have to, I appreciate that very much. Let's see. Where is it? I'll scroll to it right here. There we go. Armore20, thank you for your super chat for $5 on here. I think this is Denny's last chance to win a title. If not this year, then he's officially the Mark Martin of this generation. It's hard to say. Lastbro kind of thinks that he's going to win the championship this year and then he's going to retire right then. I'm not so sure he's going to do that with the lawsuit still going. So who knows about that? But as to his last chance, I mean, I don't know. But I mean, the emotions were certainly high at Las Vegas. And it kind of looked like, maybe in the back of his mind, he thinks it's one of his last ones. You could ask him straight up, and I'm sure he's never going to tell you. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of that, people chasing him around about that at Phoenix next week. But I don't know. He's had a tremendous year this year, and he's navigated the obstacles of this championship very well. If we do go back to a full season championship, though, I think he and that team are capable of doing it. If it does end up turning out that way. I think that, they're good enough at enough phases of the season, with the exception of the road courses, which is a big problem, especially now that we have this many road courses. And, that's going to, continue next year with the Coronado road course being added on there. It's tough. The visuals seem to indicate that maybe this is certainly one of his last chances. I'll concede that. As to if it's his very last chance, I don't know, because it's remarkable how well he's been able to perform at the age he has, staying healthy and staying competitive and doing everything that he needs to do to be as tough as he can be out there. And it's been very impressive. And so I feel like I don't want to sell him too short on that. I think that it would be disappointing if he does lose this championship, rather. Not to say the other 3 would not be deserving champions. They certainly would be, but it would be disappointing given, what he has accomplished this year, losing his longtime, sponsor partner in FedEx and picking things back up. Progressive doing, as much as I'm not a big fan of Progressive's commercials, they've done a wonderful job promoting him there and really ramping up his backing there. And he's rewarded them very well by running very well in that car and some of the other sponsors he's had this season. And it'll be interesting to see, what they can accomplish, going forward here as well. So it's going to be, it'll be very interesting. But I know that he's going to put forward the best effort he can. I think it's going to be really interesting to watch. It could get very, I mean, I'm kind of bracing for this next week too. It could be a very emotional weekend. We've seen some, as much as I'm not a big fan of the playoff system here, it is the system right now. We're going by the rules. We're going by the same steps as everybody else. Whether, again, the culmination of Heim and Zillich's championship or the culmination of Denny Hamlin's career, I think that would probably be the best case scenario, is those three winning their respective championships. But there's a lot that's at stake, a lot of unpredictability, and very, very short races where if something goes sideways, it may not get corrected in time. And, we've seen that time and again where, drivers and teams just, something just doesn't quite lock into gear, and, it doesn't quite work out for them. It could be another one of those situations. And, it's going to be tense. It's going to be tense. It'll be something to see, for sure. But, we'll see. I mean, I kind of felt that way. I see where you're coming from, Armour, because I felt very much like that when he had the championship that he lost, where they panicked and they put the big piece of tape on the front of the car, and they just had to do something. Like, they just weren't getting up to where they needed to be to challenge the people for the lead of the race. And they panicked, and it was a silly move. And, it shows, and it was a team effort. It wasn't Denny. It wasn't really had anything to do with him. He's just the one in the car, and the team just had nothing else that they could do. And they threw that at it, and, and it cost him. And, it's every little thing, but everything's got to be right. And, it's that level of perfection. And again, as I said earlier about this playoff format and how winning still isn't normal. Winning hasn't magically become easier or more predictable just because we have this playoff system in place. It hasn't. It's still just as difficult to win these races, if not harder, than it ever has been. And with the spec car in the Cup Series, that's not getting any easier. Yeah, and then and what things are going to look like on the other side of this lawsuit, if it's going to make things easier or harder for Denny and for other veteran drivers in the sport, I don't know. I don't know what that's going to look like. So I share your concern. I do agree. I agree with your concern on that. And I think, we've seen some interviews where he has kind of come to terms with maybe his career is, the same as Mark Martin's. And again, nothing against Mark either, for all that he accomplished in his career with a similar background in the short tracks and working his way up there and all that. So we'll see. So we'll see what's going on there. There's always a lot going on behind the scenes, and the full context really adds to the emotion of it. And that's going to be, that'll be something to track certainly that week as well. Let's see, where was I on this here? Was this the next one? No, that was 2 weeks ago that I was on that one. The scrolls a little bit too quick on that. Oh, Joshua Boston, yes, thank you for your comment here as well for $10. Thank you very much. There are 25 points between William Byron, Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell for a full season title fight. Yeah, there you go. Well, see, there you go. Full season championship. Just imagine, you would pretty much have, what you would have had anyway. I mean, if you want to have 4 drivers in a winner take all, or you can have 3 that are within striking distance enough that if, one little hiccup or something, and it becomes part of the full season context. It happens there naturally. I remember in 2002 when we came down to Mark Martin and Tony Stewart. That was the year that nobody seemed to want to win the championship, and every stupid thing was happening. But it was exciting because it's like, oh my God, somebody's going to just end up with this championship. But even then, Tony Stewart had to go up there and take it, and indeed did. And that started really the next phase of his own Cup career and, winning his other 2 championships and so forth. And that's the way it should be. So yeah, I'll look forward to that video there, Joshua. And thank you very much for the super chat there as well. And see, look at that. It would have Byron and Larson, who are in there in the final 4. And it would also have Christopher Bell. So you'd still have that same Joe Gibbs representation that we have from Denny Hamlin and Chase Briscoe. So it still is a good measure of who's good this year. And Christopher Bell getting those consecutive wins at the beginning of the year and how much that carries on. Yeah, I mean, of course, it assumes everything would play out the same way, but maybe it wouldn't play out too different, really, because, again, these drivers, what's changed? These guys want to win races. They're not going to be more conservative or less so. They're going to try to win these races as best they can. So that'll be another way to look at that. But yeah, no, thank you, Joshua. And again, look forward to seeing the video there too. Michael Jensen, thank you for your super chat for $2 here. Thank you very much. Congrats to Raja Karuth on being promoted to JR Motorsports next year. Yes, absolutely. That's, I've already talked about this a bit earlier, but that is going to be a fascinating championship to follow. I think he showed a lot of good speed in the 17 car when he was, again, back at Phoenix not long ago, and then getting this ride in the Truck Series. He's going to be really, really good. And, I know there's been a lot of talk about Corey Day and some of the good races he's had this year, top 5 at Vegas and some of these other ones there. Raja, with his Truck Series wins on the 1.5 mile tracks, he's going to be one to watch. And I think he's one that I think is really going to develop well in the Xfinity Series. And I think that's going to be something really good. I would hope at least to the same level as like Dean Thompson, driver that, in Dean's case, he was very close to winning some races, but also had some bad luck. Caruth's had more bad luck in the championship battle, but had, been winning races. And then getting into a top flight ride there, the Junior Motorsports deal with the hot hand they've been having here. I mean, my goodness, pretty much, almost sweeping the championship 4 there with the junior, the RCR car there with Jesse Love. It's going to be a whole other deal there, at the same time. Let's see here. But yeah, that'll be definitely a big thing to talk about too. Spencer Sandlin, thank you for your super chat here as well for $5. Sam Hunt Racing is running 2 cars full-time next year with Harrison Burton in the 24 and Dean Thompson returning to the 26. That'll be interesting too. Kind of like when they had Kaz Gralla in the second car there. And Gralla was pretty solid. I hate that he's not full-time in the Xfinity Series. He definitely earns it. And it just shows like how much talent is there, that we don't, there's not even enough seats for the people that need it there. Hopefully that changes up there as the conveyor belt kicks on and you got more guys moving one direction or the other. Yeah, Sam Hunt's team is very impressive. Again, Thompson has been a great, front runner there, and Harrison Burton, back with Toyota, where he ran so well with Joe Gibbs Racing at the end of that season, where he was beating Noah Gragson at Texas. Maybe that's the element he needs. Although again, it's good to see Burton closing out the year with AM Racing. He's certainly left that team in a better spot than he found it. For how much they were just miserable last year. They were, even when they put Cup Series guys in there like Joey Logano, they were having engine failures and crashes and everything else in between. That team was just snake bit last year. And it wasn't just Haley Deegan, although unfortunately she was involved in, some of those bad runs there as well. But she was having mechanical issues too. I remember being back at Sears Point and they had to replace the wiring harness and everything in that car. That's nothing to do with the driver. That's not her fault. It's just, unfortunately, she ended up being part of that there. So, yeah, I'm glad that AM Racing's got its feet back under it. Whoever they hire next year. Have they announced who they're driving? Who's driving that car next year? I don't think we've announced that, but I mean, that'll be, whoever does, it's a solid team. It's a solid team. And for, hopefully, they stay with Ford, which is, they're getting even more dwindling numbers with the Haas factory team going to Chevy. But we'll see what happens there too. But yeah, I'm very excited about that, Spencer, and I'm with you on that too. I think that'll be an interesting thing to watch. Also, I mean, on that same note, Ryan Ellis, we had the news from yesterday's race that he's parting ways with Mario Gosselin's team. Sounds like they're parting on good terms, so that's good to see. I mean, the Gosselin effort, having Ellis run number 71, the number that Ellis ran, very early in his career, hasn't pulled off the win, but has pulled off his first top 10 this year, which was tremendous. Good effort for him. Hopefully he can have a good run at Phoenix to cap things off for them and, find where his next phase of his career is going to be next week, or next season. So that'll be another one to look at there at the same time. That was one of the moments from this year that, didn't really have anything to do with the championship, but was so wonderfully covered there, especially on social media. I just see how many people were so excited for Ryan earlier this year, and having that run. I think it was at Texas, wasn't it? Here's a driver that's been out there, 13 years in the sport, used to be driving start and park efforts there, in Dodges back in that era. He was teammates with Matt DiBenedetto. I remember when they were just a couple of young kids out there at Bristol, posting some videos online and stuff about them it was Charlotte. He had the top 10. Again, great effort that he's had this year. That's definitely something he can have in his back pocket that he can develop to wherever he ends up for next season. Ellis is one of the hardest workers out there in terms of a guy that, is doing the PR work as well. Again, I worked right next to him at Darlington in 2017, I want to say. I think it was the first time, 17. Yeah, about that long ago. Another driver that I put in the same category, guys like Stephen Parsons, Myatt Snyder, guys like that are just, trying to do the best to stay visible because that's what the sport is. It's what have you done for us lately? You saw it in the Greg Sachs video from a couple weeks ago that, when you're staying at home, you're not staying competitive, and these people want to stay involved in the sport, and they bring that same A game to whatever they're doing in there. And that's good to see. So hopefully that'll something be, something that's going to help Ellis going forward. But yes, Spencer, again, thank you for mentioning, thank you for the super chat, and thank you for mentioning Sam Hunt's plans for next year as well. I think I'm caught up on that. Okay, yeah, I got Michael's on that one, and that one there too. Okay, excellent. All right, no, again, thank you very much, folks, and we'll do our trivia here as well. Which is the leading category? What's the leading category? I'm sorry, I'm looking over my mic arm here. Again, still getting this fine-tuned. We'll get this probably by the end of this off season. We'll get a good setup going here as well. You may know some different quilts in the background too by the time I do our next show. So stay tuned for that as well. Whoop, why did that scroll to the bottom? There it is. The bent carrot commercials. Yeah, no, those are no fun. I'm glad those have gone away. My goodness, that was just absurd. Alrighty. Teams 1, NASCAR 1. Okay. I'll go ahead and just make a call. We'll do NASCAR here for that one because I saw the person that posted that said we haven't done that in a while, and I agree. I don't think we've done that. So we'll do NASCAR and do a couple questions here as well. Oh, this is a good question right off the bat. Here we go. Okay. First question in the NASCAR category, folks. What year was the name Grand National first used for NASCAR's top circuit? This is always appropriate. Remember the Brad Keselowski interview in 2012 where he had the big Pilsner jug there and he was slamming that and he was talking to Dave Despain and being like, hey, Dave, it's Grand National. And like, yeah, it was great. But yeah, kind of relevant to that. I'll read the question again. What year, we're looking for a year, was the name Grand National first used for NASCAR's top circuit? That is the first question. Don't look it up. Try to guess it. There as well. I'm going to get some more water here, folks. All right. Yeah, I guess it's for 66 and 53 and 48 and 60 and 51. Great pictures by Steven Toronto again here of the tire grime on the sides of these cars here. Not so much tire marks. There's a couple of exceptions here, but more tire grime. Retweeting that as well. Oops, is the Twitter trending saying the Blaney one? Oh, dear. Nope, did not quite turn out that way. And yeah, I'm seeing comments already about Logano eliminated. Yeah, so I guess people are that much excited about that too. What year was the name Grand National first used for NASCAR's top circuit? Trying to make sure I have the mic pointed the right way. 9251. Okay, let's find out. We got plenty of guesses. Let's jump right into it. The answer is 1950. 1950, 1950. Does that show up on camera pretty good? I think it does. Okay. 1950. I think a couple of people move this arm down. I keep peeking up and down this thing. It's like a Family Guy sketch. All right, here we go. Beast of Metal, you guessed it right, but were you the first one? 48, 60. Yeah, I think you were the first one. Right on. You got it. 1950. Very, very close. All righty. Okay. Next question. Who owned Daytona's Ebony Bar in the late 40s and early 50s? Who owned Daytona's Ebony Bar in the late 40s and early 50s? My voice sounds so gravelly. I don't know why. In a late season on the allergy season this year. I don't know. Who owned Daytona's Ebony Bar in the late 40s and early 50s? I'll go ahead and mention this because I mentioned it in the Patreon already at patreon.com/lastcaronbrock. Since posting the Greg Sachs video, I've already been full tilt on getting the next episode of 500 Days worked on here. That has been a whole lot of fun to put together. That one's going to be a very long video, I think. But I don't think the 500 Days episodes don't seem to take quite as long to actually produce because a big part of it is the race reviews and splicing in the racing action there. So it makes it a little bit easier to do that. I was going to cover kind of both those weekends there as well. That's going to be really interesting. So I'll have the rough draft of that script done probably in the next couple weeks here. I'm a good way towards completing it now. I'd say probably at least another week or so, probably a couple because of the trip coming up this week. I don't usually get a whole lot of work done on the videos during the race trips. But we'll see how things kind of work out there. But, yeah, we'll work on that, and get that set up there. And then I have a script on a shorter, video that's involved on a sponsor, that was involved in NASCAR before that is actually ready to be a final draft, and then kind of get that going. And if you want a clue about that video's subject, you may have noticed the desktop wallpaper that I had on my picture earlier when I was showing the NASCAR Xfinity Series standings. And this will be, and in case you missed it, I'll show, let's see, does it let me, okay, hang on. I got to squeeze it back here as well. This will be another one here for you guys too. So a little something special for you guys here on this. I did mention this in the Patreon here, so they've now had a heads up. This is among the pictures I have collected here from Brian Hallman at the BRH Racing Archives of the Slender U Figure Salons number 31 that raced by Butch Miller, Brad Teague, and other drivers there as well. That is going to be another subject of a video coming up, a shorter video that will be coming up on the channel here very soon as well. So I'll probably get that one completed next, and then we'll finish the rough draft of the 500 Days episode and get that up. So there is going to be no shortage of stuff I'll be working on here this off season. But you'll see, that's a little preview of coming attractions there before we get back to that as well. So stay tuned on that for those of you that follow the YouTube channel here as well. Andrew Bremner, I see your question there about 500 days for the next season. Stay tuned on that. We got a lot of 2001 to get through here before we get there, but the direction will be probably clear by that point. The question once again: who owned Daytona's Ebony Bar in the late 40s and early 50s? And let's see what questions. Okay, Harley J. Earl, the France family. Okay, I'm trying to scroll here. There we go. I'm doing something a little different. I usually have a mouse pad here. I'm trying to put my mouse forward of this to get it on here. It wasn't France. It was probably one of the Speedway owners, Carl Kiekhofer. I'd say the Lloyd in Lake Lloyd, Paul Newman. Alrighty, Brian France. Yep. Alrighty, here we go. Who owned Daytona's Ebony Bar in the late 40s and early 50s? The answer is Bill France Sr. Bill France Sr. I think somebody got that one. I mean, James Stenger, you said France family, and some of you guessed Brian France. Bill France Sr. So must have owned it around the area. Yeah, it seemed like it would have been somebody else. There you go. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, this is kind of a fun one. I'll probably have this one be the last question for the night here, folks, because this is kind of an interesting one here. This one's for you music fans out there. So I'm gonna read it here. Who sang "Up Against the Wall, You Redneck Mothers" at the White House in 1978? I don't even know where this is coming from, but okay. Let me read this again. Who sang, quote, "Up Against the Wall, You Redneck Mothers," end quote, at the White House in 1978? So it sounds like a hell of a party. Alrighty. Who sang "Up Against the Wall, You Redneck Mothers" at the White House in 1978? So I guess this is for Willie Nelson and Kyle Petty and Marty Robbins. It is not Elvis or Michael Jackson, that's for sure. Yeah, probably not. Who sang "Up Against the Wall, You Redneck Mothers" at the White House in 1978? That was under Carter's administration. Yes, indeed. Who sang "Up Against the Wall, You Redneck Mothers" at the White House in 1978? Johnny Cash, Cale Yarborough. Yeah, I mean, again, if it's on the NASCAR one, it makes it sound like maybe it was a driver doing it, like maybe a karaoke thing, or was it like an actual artist that maybe performed it at like a championship banquet at the White House? Because I know Jimmy Carter was plugged into racing and stuff from his background. Yeah, we'll see. Oh, you're watching both streams, Beast of Metal. There you go. I'm sure Urinating Trees Steelers one will be more exciting here now that we're winding down here a little bit, but we're almost wrapped up here, and we'll go. But thank you again for your support. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in here tonight. I really do appreciate it. These shows are, again, the LASCAR streaming contingent is a very small but very passionate group, and I know you guys enjoy this, and I try to put together the best show here and try to make it look better for you guys too. Give you something fun to look at here while I'm rambling on about this and that. So, and we'll do another show on the road here next Sunday. So be excited for that there as well. We're gonna pack up this stuff pretty much after the show tonight and start getting ready for that too. So stay tuned. All right, here we go. One more time. Who sang "Up Against the Wall, You Redneck Mothers" at the White House in 1978? And the answer is Willie Nelson. Willie Nelson. I think somebody got that. All righty. Willie Nelson, Beast of Metal. I think you were the first one on that. First guess was Michael Waltrip. Oh, was that back to the Ebony Bar one? I don't know. Brian's phone. Yeah, there we go. Willie Nelson, indeed. Yeah. See, I'm not much of a music expert there, but I guess that would be the one there too. Alrighty. Sounds like something from Kid Rock. It does. Maybe you did a cover of it. Who knows? Alrighty. Well, tell you what, folks, we're gonna call that good here as well. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in tonight. I'm glad. glad everything went fine in inspection, because I didn't really want to rewrite the article that had started here for Chase Briscoe tonight. But again, congratulations to the championship 4 in all 3 series. Congratulations today to the winner, William Byron, for getting his walk-off win at Martinsville to punch his ticket into the next room, the next group there for that. And yeah, that will do it for the show this week. So again, the Twitter feed is at Last Car on Brock. The Patreon is patreon.com/lastcaronbrock. And of course, the website is lastcar.info for all your last place essentials. And our next show is going to be next Sunday on the road in Phoenix for championship weekend. We will be covering the championship battles conclusion for the Truck Series, Xfinity Series, and the Cup Series. That will be probably a later night show, kind of like our Sears Point show on Sunday evening. We'll try to make that work out there. I haven't evaluated the internet over at the hotel there, but that's what we're going to at least attempt to do there that evening. And we'll take questions and go from there. So in the meantime, stay tuned to the Twitter feed at Last Car on Brock. We'll do some follow-ups there this week. We'll get the magnet set up there. I got to take a picture of that as well. I don't think I've done that yet. Yeah, so we got a lot to catch up on and a short time to get there, and we're going to go ahead and do that. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and I'll see you all next time.